guys, it's Abby. Today I'm going to be reading a book that I really like. It's called Mrs. Rainbow and it's written by Neil Griffiths. If you like it too, give me a comment and a like. This is the house where Mrs. Rainbow lives. Just wait until you see what it's like inside. She has painted the kitchen bright green, the conservatory a warm orange, and the sitting room soothing shades of yellow. Upstairs, the bathroom is ocean blue, and the study a welcoming red. The guest room is a restful violet. Mrs. Rainbow's own bedroom, however, is decorated in one of her favourite colours, indigo, and there you will find every shade of purple imaginable. Mrs. Rainbow is never happier than when relaxing in her garden. Here she is now, sitting in her favourite spot, enjoying a glass of cool lemonade. Yummy. She loves her garden at all times of the year, with the reds, golds and browns of autumn and the silvers and whites of winter, and the yellows and purples and greens of spring. But summer is Mrs. Rainbow's favourite season, and today her garden looks at its best. However, Mrs. Rainbow can't relax for too long today, as the village school is holding a car boot sale and she's keen to get there early and pick up some bargains. She's the first to arrive and can hardly wait to get started. Nothing excites Mrs. Rainbow more than the thought of finding something unexpected to add to her colourful home. After an hour's hunting, she emerges smiling from the school playground, clutching a burgundy patchwork cushion for the study, a bright orange candle for the conservatory, a purple mug for her nighttime hot chocolate drink, and a turquoise soap dish. She will have to decide later whether this will be for the bathroom or the kitchen. On her way home, the sky begins to cloud over and a light drizzle begins to fall. By the time she reaches the house, it has turned into a very grey day indeed, and Mrs. Rainbow is glad to get inside. On days like this, Mrs. Rainbow usually keeps busy working on her latest painting or putting the finishing touches to her tapestry. Sometimes she just sits and watches her tropical fish, dazzled by their stunning colours. Today is different. Mrs. Rainbow has hardly got her coat off before she rushes upstairs to try out the new hair colour she has bought from the chemist. The bottle says Bermuda Blonde, but as she emerges from the wash basin, blonde it certainly is not. It's more like peacock green. Perfect, thinks Mrs. Rainbow, as she admires herself in the bathroom mirror. She has barely finished drying her hair when there's a loud knock at the front door. She's greeted by three somewhat startled members of the District Council Planning Department, shocked perhaps by the colour of Mrs. Rainbow's hair or by her matching outfit. Good afternoon, madam, stutters a stout gentleman wearing a black pinstripe suit and a bowler hat. He explains that they are from the planning department and hands a letter to Mrs. Rainbow to read. To the occupant of Rainbow Cottage. At our recent monthly planning meeting, it was decided that your house, Rainbow Cottage, is not in keeping with the rest of the village. It was agreed that the cottage is far too colourful and must be immediately painted grey to match all the other buildings. Signed, the District Council Planning Committee. Mrs. Rainbow tries to protest, as she loves her little cottage and thought everybody else did. But the councillors will not change their decision and say they're sorry, but rules are rules, and the painters will start work in the morning. As they leave, Mrs. Rainbow looks sadly at the houses in the village beyond, before removing her house sign and gently closing the door behind her. Oh, poor Mrs. Rainbow. As promised, the painters arrive promptly the following morning and quickly set to work. They feel sad too, but are only following the council's orders. Mrs. Rainbow is nowhere to be seen, and the curtains to the cottage remain strangely drawn all day. News quickly spreads to the other villagers through Mrs. Braithwaite, who almost rides her bicycle off the road and through the hedge when she catches sight of the newly painted cottage. Soon a large inquisitive crowd of people gather outside, hardly able to believe their eyes. It is the Reverend Fowler who finally plucks up enough courage to knock on the door and ask Mrs. Rainbow how she's feeling. After some time she appears, looking pale and grey. She thanks the villagers for their concern and says she's feeling a little off-coloured today, before returning into the darkness of the cottage. The worried villagers hurry to the village hall, where a special meeting has been called to discuss the situation. Several hours later, they emerge looking very pleased with themselves. Early the next morning, even before the sun has risen, a long queue has formed outside Fred Stanley's DIY store. It seems as if the whole village is there. The following day, the Reverend Fowler, accompanied by a large crowd, arrives outside Mrs. Rainbow's cottage. He knocks on the door and asks her to step out into the front garden, since they have a surprise which will bring the colour back into her life. Mrs. Rainbow, still looking pale and grey, shuffles nervously out of the doorway and stands in silent amazement. She can hardly believe her eyes. The Reverend Fowler has painted the vicarage purple and plum, while the post office is a startling scarlet. Jean's hair salon is now pastel shades of lilac and peach, the Crossroads Cafe a rich maroon, and the library emerald green. In fact, every house and building in the village has been newly painted in the most glorious colours. Even the church has a bright new yellow steeple. Tears stream down Mrs. Rainbow's face. She's never seen anything so beautiful. "You did all this for me?" she asks. The villagers nod and smile proudly. Mrs. Rainbow sits staring at the patchwork of colours until darkness falls. She reluctantly makes her way indoors, feeling very happy indeed. Several days later, the district councillors return to the cottage with another important letter for Mrs. Rainbow to read. To Mrs. Rainbow, at our recent monthly planning meeting, it was decided unanimously that your unnamed house is not in keeping with the rest of the village. It was agreed that your cottage is far too dull, and it should be painted in the brightest colours immediately. Signed, the District Council Planning Committee. Mrs. Rainbow can hardly contain her excitement and hugs each of the councillors, much to their embarrassment, before rushing into the village to tell everyone the wonderful news. After a visit to Fred Stanley's DIY store, she invites the whole village to a painting party to thank them for their kindness. and the cottage is soon restored to its original beauty. And that afternoon the villagers enjoy a delicious and colourful afternoon tea. The party is briefly interrupted by a sudden change in the weather, as a sudden shower forces everybody to rush inside. However, on their return to the garden, they are treated to a beautiful surprise. As Mrs. Rainbow admires the colourful scene, she notices that not only the weather is changing. The end. I hope you guys enjoyed that video.